Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English in Moments. I'm Elena, your host, and today we are doing something I have been wanting to do for a very long time. We are talking about the thing that separates people who speak English from people who truly live inside it. The thing that, when a learner finally gets it, makes native speakers stop mid-conversation and say, "Wait, you are actually funny in English. That is not nothing. That is everything." We are talking about English humor. Now, before we begin, I want to say something honestly. Humor is the most under-teached skill in all of language learning. Grammar books do not touch it. Vocabulary lists do not cover it. Most English courses treat it as though it does not exist, or as though it is some mysterious gift that either you have or you do not. That is completely wrong. Humor in English, specifically British English humor, which is the style we will spend most of today studying, is a learnable, structured, rule-following system. It has patterns, it has categories, it has techniques. And once you understand those techniques, you can study them, practice them, and gradually begin to use them until the day comes when something you say makes a native English speaker genuinely laugh. And you know, in that moment, that you have crossed a line that most learners never cross. Here is what makes English humor unique and why so many learners miss it completely. Most cultures use humor to show strength. The joke is a display. Look how clever I am. Look how sharp. Look how confident. English humor, particularly British English humor, works almost entirely the opposite way. It shows weakness. It minimizes. It reduces. It deflects. The British comedian does not say, "Look how impressive I am." The British comedian says, "Can you believe how completely useless I turned out to be?" And then everyone laughs. Not because the person is useless, but because the observation is precise, and the self-awareness is beautiful, and the willingness to be the subject of the joke shows a kind of courage that everyone respects. There is a second thing that makes English humor unusual. It is often disguised as something else. Irony sounds like sincerity. Sarcasm sounds like a compliment. Understatement sounds like a factual report. The deadpan delivery sounds like a person who has no idea they have said something funny. A learner who is listening only to the literal meaning of the words will miss the joke entirely. You have to learn to listen at two levels at once, to what is being said and to what is actually meant. And those two things are very often not the same. Today, we are going to learn every major form of English humor from the beginning. 8 categories, 25 examples per category, 200 examples in total. For every example, I will explain the technique, decode the gap between what is said and what is meant, identify what makes it work, and give you a natural context so you can hear it living in real conversation. This is the lesson that no English class has ever given you. Let us begin. Category 1. Irony. How English irony works and why it sounds like its opposite. Irony is the foundation of English humor. It is the technique of saying one thing while clearly meaning another, and relying on the listener to understand the gap between the two. British irony is particularly dense and often very subtle. The ironic statement is delivered in exactly the same tone as a genuine one, which means the listener has to use context, relationship, and cultural understanding to work out which one they are hearing. The golden rule of English irony: the bigger the understatement, the bigger the gap between what is said and what is meant, the more ironic and therefore the funnier it is. Example 1. Oh, that went well. Said after something has gone spectacularly badly. The tone is flat. The delivery is calm. The words are positive, but the context makes the meaning clear. It was a disaster. Context. You have just sat through a presentation where the projector broke, the speaker forgot their notes, and 3 board members left early. Usage. Oh, that went well. I give it until Thursday before somebody resigns. Why it works. The gap between the positive words and the disastrous reality is so large that the irony is immediately obvious to anyone who was in the room. The flatness of the delivery makes it funnier than any dramatic reaction would. Repeat. Oh, that went well. Example 2. Just a small technical issue. Said when the technical issue is catastrophic. The entire system is down. The website has crashed. The data has been lost. Context. An IT manager addressing the company after the server has been offline for 6 hours. Usage. We're experiencing just a small technical issue. We expect everything to be restored sometime this decade. Why it works. Just a small technical issue is the language of something minor and easily fixed. The reality is total collapse. The gap is enormous, and the addition of sometime this decade makes the irony delicious. Repeat. Just a small technical issue. Example 3. I'm sure that will be fine. Said when everyone in the room knows it will absolutely not be fine. Context. Someone has just suggested a plan that has 17 obvious problems. Usage. We'll just leave the catering to sort itself out on the day. I'm sure that will be fine. Why it works. The calm confidence of, I'm sure that will be fine, in a situation of obvious impending chaos is recognizably ironic. The listener immediately understands the speaker knows it will not be fine. Repeat. I'm sure that will be fine. Example 4. Because that worked out so well last time. Used when someone proposes repeating an action that previously failed badly. Context. A colleague suggests trying the same approach that caused a significant problem 3 months ago. Usage. Let's go back to the original timeline. Because that worked out so well last time. Why it works. The phrase because invites causation. If it worked out well before, there is reason to repeat it. The listener knows the opposite is true. This is irony used as memory, reminding people of a shared failure without having to describe it. Repeat. Because that worked out so well last time. Example 5. What a pleasant surprise. Said when something entirely predictable and bad has happened. Context. The train is delayed again, for the 4th time this week. Usage. The 7:15 is delayed by 40 minutes. What a pleasant surprise. Why it works. Pleasant surprise implies the event was unexpected and agreeable. The train delay is neither. The irony is so obvious it functions almost as dry resignation. The speaker is not even angry, just wearily amused. Repeat. What a pleasant surprise. Example 6. Oh, I'm devastated. Said in a tone of complete calm when something mildly disappointing has happened, or even something secretly welcome. Context. A meeting you were dreading has been canceled. Usage. The strategy meeting has been pushed to next month. Oh, I'm devastated. Why it works. The word devastated is enormous. It suggests grief, collapse, ruin. The flat delivery and the mildness of the disappointment create irony that is also self-aware. Repeat. Oh, I'm devastated. Example 7. Well, this is cozy. Said about a space that is very much not cozy. Cramped, ugly, cold, or all three. Context. Walking into a tiny, freezing conference room with insufficient chairs. Usage. Right. We're all in here then. Well, this is cozy. Why it works. Cozy implies warmth and intimacy in a charming, welcoming space. The obvious opposite reality makes the irony immediately recognizable. The word well at the start is a marker that something ironic or resigned is coming. Repeat. Well, this is cozy. Example 8. Brilliant timing. Said when the timing of something is the worst possible. Context. Your key presenter has just called in sick an hour before a major event. Usage. Our keynote speaker is unwell and won't be joining us. Brilliant timing. Why it works. Brilliant is one of the most versatile irony words in British English. Deployed with flat delivery on a terrible outcome, it creates instant irony. The listener knows that the speaker's actual assessment is the precise opposite of brilliant. Repeat. Brilliant timing. Example 9. What an absolute treat. Said about something deeply unpleasant that is being endured rather than enjoyed. Context. Standing in a queue in the rain for 40 minutes. Usage. Another 20 minutes and we'll be at the front. What an absolute treat. Why it works. A treat is a pleasure, something given as a reward or an unexpected delight. Being soaked in a queue is neither. The word absolute amplifies the irony by suggesting the speaker is fully committed to this characterization. Repeat. What an absolute treat. Example 10. Can't imagine why. Said when the reason for something is completely obvious. Context. A product launch has failed because the price was 3 times the market average. Usage. Apparently sales have been below expectations. Can't imagine why. Why it works. Can't imagine why says the speaker is baffled. The speaker is not baffled. Everyone knows exactly why. The fake puzzlement is the irony. This sentence often works as a dry comment delivered to nobody in particular, under the breath. Repeat. Can't imagine why. Example 11. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Said when you have just been unable to remember something that you absolutely should know. Context. A doctor cannot remember which medication they prescribed last month. Or someone blanks completely on their own phone number. Usage. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Sometime before retirement. Why it works. The phrase is genuinely optimistic in its surface meaning. Combined with the implied timeline of sometime before retirement, the irony lands as gentle self-mockery. Repeat, I'm sure it'll come back to me. Example 12. Oh, we're doing this then. Said when someone has just initiated something you were hoping to avoid. Context. Your manager asks you to present an unexpected update in front of the full board. Usage. Elena, could you take us through the Q3 numbers right now? Oh, we're doing this then. Why it works. The we suggests collaborative decision-making. The reality is one person has decided and you are simply being told. The then gives it a resigned, darkly amused quality. The audience recognizes that the speaker is processing something unwelcome in real time. Repeat. Oh, we're doing this then. Example 13. Perfectly straightforward. Said about something that is extremely complicated, confusing, or badly designed. Context. Reading an instruction manual that has been translated from another language with apparent disregard for human comprehension. Usage. Just follow the instructions on page 47. Perfectly straightforward. Why it works. Perfectly straightforward sets a standard of absolute simplicity. The reality is chaos. The gap between the standard claimed and the reality experienced is the irony. Repeat. Perfectly straightforward. Example 14. Absolutely no pressure. Said in a context where there is enormous pressure. Context. A manager tells a team member that the board will be attending their presentation. Usage. The CEO and all 6 board members will be there. Absolutely no pressure. Why it works. The delivery of absolutely no pressure in a situation of obvious maximum pressure is a recognized British move. A way of acknowledging the pressure ironically rather than saying something helpful about it. Repeat. Absolutely no pressure. Example 15. I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing. Said when you would clearly rather be doing almost anything else. Context. You are spending your Saturday afternoon filling in a 40-page compliance form. Usage. Tax return time again. I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing. Why it works. The statement claims supreme enthusiasm. The context reveals complete opposite feelings. The gap is obvious. The irony is warm and resigned rather than bitter. Repeat. I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing. Example 16. That's one word for it. Used when someone has described a situation using a word that is far too mild. Context. Someone describes a catastrophic project as challenging. Usage. The restructure has been challenging. That's one word for it. Why it works. That's one word for it. Acknowledges the description while implying there are better, stronger, more accurate words available. It is the ironic, polite way of saying you are wildly underselling the difficulty. Repeat. That's one word for it. Example 17. Oh, perfect. Said when something goes wrong in a way that is the opposite of perfect. Context. You have just arrived at the airport and realized you left your passport at home. Usage. I've left my passport on the kitchen table. Oh, perfect. Why it works. Perfect is the strongest positive word available, applied to a disaster in a flat, resigned tone. It becomes immediately ironic. The British love of this particular phrase reflects a cultural tendency to process bad news with deadpan resignation rather than outward panic. Repeat. Oh, perfect. Example 18. Clearly, I've thought this through. Said when you have demonstrably not thought something through. Context. You attempt a DIY project with no preparation, no tools, and no expertise, and it immediately fails. Usage. The shelf just fell off the wall. Clearly, I've thought this through. Why it works. Self-directed irony is one of the most charming forms in British humor. Saying, clearly I've thought this through, when the evidence proves you have not, is honest, self-aware, and disarming. Repeat. Clearly I've thought this through. Example 19. That's going well. The most versatile, ironic observation in British English. Said whenever something is visibly going badly. Context. A colleague is trying to fix a technical problem and is making it worse with every attempt. Usage. You've been at that for 45 minutes and it's now making a noise it wasn't making before. That's going well. Why it works. That's going well has a quality of gentle observation. It notices rather than criticizes. It is almost affectionate. The irony is warm rather than unkind. Repeat. That's going well. Example 20. Well, nobody saw that coming. Said when something entirely predictable has happened. Context. A hastily planned event has failed in a way that everyone predicted. Usage. The outdoor concert in November was rained off. Well, nobody saw that coming. Why it works. Nobody saw that coming means it was a surprise. The implicit meaning is that everyone saw it coming and it happened anyway. The irony functions as a polite critique of the decision-making. Repeat. Well, nobody saw that coming. Example 21. Right, that's fine. Said in a tone that suggests it is very much not fine. Context. You find out that a colleague has taken credit for your work in a meeting you were not invited to. Usage. He presented the whole project as his own. Right, that's fine. Why it works. The sequence right, then that's fine, delivered flatly, is a British stress response that says the speaker is processing something significant while maintaining composed irony. The listener immediately understands that the situation is the opposite of fine. Repeat. Right, that's fine. Example 22. Fascinating. Said in a tone of complete boredom about something tedious. Context. Someone is explaining at length a topic that is of no conceivable interest to you. Usage. And that's how the new server migration protocol was implemented. Fascinating. Why it works. The single word fascinating, delivered flatly, is one of the most elegant, ironic responses available. It says everything and requires no further elaboration. Repeat. Fascinating. Example 23. What could possibly go wrong? Said before or after an obviously flawed plan. Context. Your team has decided to launch a major campaign on a Friday afternoon before a bank holiday with no contingency plan. Usage. We're going live in 3 hours, and we haven't done any testing. What could possibly go wrong? Why it works. The question is not actually a question. It is delivered as a statement. The implied answer is many things. The rhetorical confidence of the phrasing is the joke. Repeat. What could possibly go wrong? Example 24. I feel very supported. Said when you feel the precise opposite. Abandoned, unsupported, left to handle something alone. Context. You are the only person on a team of 6 who has done any preparation for an important meeting. Usage. Everyone sent their apologies for this morning, and I'm here alone with a client. I feel very supported. Why it works. I feel very supported sets a tone of warmth and affirmation that the situation completely contradicts. The irony of this phrase is particularly cutting because it mimics the language of management and well-being culture. Repeat. I feel very supported. Example 25. Great, love that for us. A more contemporary ironic expression indicating something bad has happened to both parties simultaneously. Context. You and a colleague both arrive at the office to find the heating has broken and it is 0 degrees outside. Usage. There's no heating, and apparently the engineer can't come until Thursday. Great, love that for us. Why it works. Love that for us borrows from the language of enthusiastic affirmation and applies it to a miserable shared situation. The gap between the enthusiastic language and the cold reality is the joke. Repeat. Great, love that for us. 25 examples of irony. And I want to say something before we continue. Irony only works when both people understand it is irony. The moment of recognition, when both people simultaneously understand the gap between what is said and what is meant, is the moment of connection. Irony is a trust exercise. It says, I know you are intelligent enough to understand that I do not mean this literally. That is why irony, handled well, builds intimacy rather than confusion. Let us continue. Category 2, understatement, the British art of saying less than you mean. If irony says the opposite of what is meant, understatement says less than what is meant. It reduces the scale of something significant, describes something extreme with quiet modesty, and trusts the listener to multiply the description by several orders of magnitude to arrive at the truth. Understatement is perhaps the most distinctively British form of humor. Other cultures often use hyperbole, exaggeration, to make things funnier. British English frequently does the opposite, using dramatic reduction to produce the same effect. The smaller the description of something enormous, the greater the comedic impact. Example 26. It's not ideal. Used when something is significantly worse than not ideal, a disaster, a catastrophe, a situation that anyone else would describe in much stronger terms. Context. A company's entire online infrastructure has gone down on their busiest trading day of the year. Usage. We appear to have lost the website entirely. It's not ideal. Why it works. Not ideal sets a standard just below perfect. The actual situation is complete operational collapse. The understatement is so enormous, it becomes funny. and also functions as a form of professional composure under pressure. Repeat. It's not ideal. Example 27. A bit much. Used when something is enormously excessive. Context. A manager sends a 17-paragraph email to a team of 4 about the correct way to use the kitchen. Usage. 17 paragraphs about milk storage. That's a bit much. Why it works. A bit much means slightly too much. The actual level of excess is staggering. The understatement is the joke. Repeat. A bit much. Example 28. Not my favorite. Used to describe something you find genuinely terrible. Food, an experience, a person, a decision. Context. Someone asks if you enjoyed the obligatory team building exercise involving trust falls in a field in November. Usage. It was not my favorite afternoon, I'll be honest. Why it works. Not my favorite sets up the existence of a hierarchy of preferences in which this experience ranks low. The implied truth that it was one of the most miserable experiences in recent memory is far more extreme. Repeat. Not my favorite. Example 29. It's been a bit of a week. Said when the week has been catastrophic on multiple simultaneous fronts. Context. Everything has gone wrong. A major project failure, a personal crisis, and a series of technical disasters, all within 7 days. Usage. How are you? It's been a bit of a week, if I'm honest. Why it works. A bit of a week implies that the week has been slightly unusual or difficult. The casual phrasing conceals the scale of the suffering. The listener understands immediately that if a British person says it's been a bit of a week, they have probably been through something significant. Repeat. It's been a bit of a week. Example 30. Somewhat concerning. Used when something is genuinely alarming and possibly dangerous. Context. A structural engineer has just noticed a crack in a load-bearing wall during an inspection. Usage. There's a crack here that I'd describe as somewhat concerning. Why it works. Somewhat concerning sits at the mild end of the worry spectrum. The actual situation may require evacuation. The professional understatement is very British and very funny in its composure. Repeat. Somewhat concerning. Example 31. He's not wrong. Used to describe someone who is absolutely, undeniably, spectacularly right. Context. A colleague has just made a point so accurate and insightful that it has reframed the entire discussion. Usage. He's not wrong, is he? That's changed how I see the whole thing. Why it works. He's not wrong withholds the full force of the endorsement. You could say he's completely right. You say he's not wrong. The reduction is the joke. It implies agreement while maintaining the British instinct not to be too effusive. Repeat. He's not wrong. Example 32. Could have gone better. Used when something has gone about as badly as it possibly could have. Context. A product launch event where the venue flooded, the speaker was ill, and the press did not show up. Usage. All things considered, it could have gone better. Why it works. Could have gone better implies that a better version was possible with some adjustments. The reality is that almost no version could have gone worse. The phrase is simultaneously accurate and wildly underselling. Repeat. Could have gone better. Example 33. Mildly irritating. Used to describe something that is genuinely infuriating. Context. You have been on hold for 2 hours and your call has been dropped 4 times. Usage. It's been mildly irritating, if I'm honest. Why it works. Mildly irritating describes the very lowest level of frustration, a minor nuisance. The actual experience is an exercise in sustained torture. The gap is enormous, and the composure required to describe it this way is itself a form of very British humor. Repeat. Mildly irritating. Example 34. A minor setback. Used to describe a catastrophic failure. Context. A year of work has just been lost because of a data backup failure. Usage. We've experienced a minor setback with the data. We appear to have lost everything from the last 12 months. Why it works. Minor setback describes a small, temporary obstacle. Losing a year of work is a catastrophic, potentially business-ending failure. The use of minor in this context is darkly, brilliantly funny. Repeat. A minor setback. Example 35. Not without its challenges. Used to describe something that has been genuinely overwhelming. Context. You have managed a project that required you to work 7-day weeks for 4 months while dealing with a team in crisis. Usage. The last quarter has been not without its challenges. Why it works. Not without its challenges is a double negative that arrives at a positive. The experience had some challenges. It implies the challenges were manageable. The truth is they were enormous. The formal phrasing of the understatement makes it funnier. Repeat. Not without its challenges. Example 36. A little on the warm side. Used to describe conditions of genuinely extreme heat. Context. You are in a building where the air conditioning has broken during a heat wave. Usage. It's a little on the warm side in here, isn't it? Why it works. A little on the warm side means slightly above a comfortable temperature. The reality is the building is an oven. The British relationship with weather makes this understatement particularly recognizable. Repeat. A little on the warm side. Example 37. Not entirely without controversy. Used to describe something that has caused enormous controversy, conflict, or scandal. Context. A policy decision that has divided the organization and led to multiple resignations. Usage. The new overtime policy has been not entirely without controversy. Why it works. Not entirely without controversy means it has attracted some minor objections. The truth is, it has been a firestorm. The formal, measured phrasing is a classic British institutional understatement. Repeat. Not entirely without controversy. Example 46. A touch excessive. Used to describe something wildly, outrageously excessive. Context. A budget proposal comes in at 12 times the original estimate. Usage. The revised quote is a touch excessive. We were expecting something closer to the original number. Why it works. A touch excessive means very slightly more than is appropriate. 12 times the original estimate is not a touch anything. The gap is the joke. Repeat. a touch excessive. Example 47. Not his strongest work. Said about something that is genuinely terrible. Context. A colleague has produced a piece of work that is so bad it is almost impressive in its badness. Usage. I've had a look at the draft. It's not his strongest work. Why it works. Not his strongest work allows that other, better work exists, and this simply represents a dip in quality. The implication that this is an outlier below his usual standard is generous. The reality may be that it is his typical standard. Repeat. Not his strongest work. Example 48. A somewhat suboptimal outcome. Used to describe a complete and total failure. Context. A new product launch has failed to sell a single unit in its first month. Usage. The launch results represent a somewhat suboptimal outcome. Why it works. Suboptimal means less than optimal, below the best possible. Somewhat suboptimal means slightly below optimal. Zero sales is not somewhat suboptimal. It is the worst possible outcome. The formal, clinical language of the understatement is the joke. Repeat. A somewhat suboptimal outcome. Example 49. I've worked in worse places. Said about a workplace that has significant and obvious problems, but the speaker is choosing to find the positive. Barely. Context. You have started a new job where the office is unheated, the equipment is broken, and the management is chaotic. Usage. The facilities are a bit basic, but I've worked in worse places. Why it works. The phrase damns with faint praise. The implication is that the standard is low, but has been met. The bar being just above worse places is very low praise indeed. Repeat. I've worked in worse places. Example 50. Not the worst thing that's ever happened. Said about something that is clearly quite bad, with the implication that other worse things exist somewhere as a comparative frame. Context. A long-planned holiday has been disrupted by weather, delays, and illness. Usage. It wasn't the worst holiday we've ever had. It wasn't the best either. Why it works. Not the worst is the most minimal positive assessment available. It means only that something worse exists. As praise or comfort, it is very nearly useless, which is the point. Repeat. Not the worst thing that's ever happened. 50 examples. 2 categories complete. You now have the twin pillars of British humor, irony and understatement, in your hands. Let us continue with the next technique. Category 3. Self-deprecation. Criticizing yourself in a way people love you for. Self-deprecation is the art of making yourself the target of the joke. Rather than pointing the humor outward at situations, events, or other people, the self-deprecating speaker turns it entirely inward. They identify their own limitations, their own failures, their own absurdities, and present them with warmth, precision, and a complete absence of bitterness. This is a profoundly counterintuitive technique for many cultures. Why would you choose to highlight your own weaknesses? Because in English-speaking culture, particularly in Britain, self-deprecation is not weakness. It is the opposite of weakness. It requires genuine confidence to be funny about yourself, because only a secure person can afford to make themselves the joke. Self-deprecating humor says, I know what I am. I see myself clearly, and I find the whole thing rather amusing. That is a form of freedom. Example 51. I'm not exactly known for my patience. A self-aware admission that is simultaneously an explanation, an apology, and a gentle joke. Context. You have just sent a third follow-up email 2 hours after the first. Usage. I know I'm not exactly known for my patience. I've sent 3 emails. I apologize for none of them. Why it works. Not exactly known for sets up the self-awareness without full admission. The apology for none of them adds dry self-knowledge. The combination is charming because it is honest and unapologetic at the same time. Repeat. I'm not exactly known for my patience. Example 52. I'm what you might call an enthusiastic amateur. Used to describe yourself doing something you are genuinely not good at with evident enthusiasm. Context. You have just produced a piece of home cooking, DIY, or creative work of questionable quality. Usage. I made this myself, by the way. I'm what you might call an enthusiastic amateur. Why it works. Enthusiastic amateur acknowledges both the effort and the gap between effort and result. What you might call adds a slightly formal, ironic distance. The self-assessment is accurate and charming. Repeat. I'm what you might call an enthusiastic amateur. Example 53. I have a very specific set of skills. None of them are useful right now. Used when the situation requires something you are categorically not equipped to provide. Context. There is a technical problem, and someone asks whether you can help fix it. Usage. Can you take a look at this? I have a very specific set of skills. None of them are useful right now. Why it works. The phrase borrows the structure of a famous film quote and subverts it. The admission that your skills are specific but inapplicable is self-deprecating, relatable, and diffuses the expectation of competence in the right moment. Repeat. I have a very specific set of skills. None of them are useful right now. Example 54. I'm working on a system. Said when there is clearly no system, just chaos. Context. Your desk, files, or approach to organization is evidently chaotic. Usage. I know it looks like a disaster. I'm working on a system. Why it works. Working on implies progress toward a functional state. The system does not exist yet. The phrase defends a chaotic situation by claiming it is a work in progress. The listener understands the system may never arrive. Repeat. I'm working on a system. Example 55. I was ahead of my time, or just wrong. Hard to tell. Used about a decision or opinion that turned out to be incorrect. Context. You predicted something that did not happen or made a choice that did not work out. Usage. I said this format would never catch on. I was ahead of my time. Or just wrong. Hard to tell. Why it works. Ahead of my time is the generous self-interpretation of being wrong. The immediate correction, or just wrong, hard to tell, removes the self-aggrandizement and replaces it with honest self-deprecation. The structure is funny because it builds up and then deflates. Repeat. I was ahead of my time. Or just wrong. Hard to tell. Example 56. I gave it my best shot. My best shot was not enough. A factual, unsentimental assessment of a failed attempt. Context. You have tried to fix something, learn something, or achieve something and not succeeded. Usage. I tried to assemble the flat pack furniture. I gave it my best shot. My best shot was not enough. There are parts left over. Why it works. The repetition of best shot, followed by its honest assessment, is self-deprecation at its most structurally elegant. There are parts left over is the perfect landing. Repeat. I gave it my best shot. My best shot was not enough. Example 57. I've made a detailed study of doing this wrong. Use to acknowledge that your many failures in an area have given you expertise in failure. Context. You have attempted and failed at something multiple times. Usage. Cake decorating is harder than it looks. I've made a detailed study of doing it wrong. Why it works. A detailed study sounds like research and expertise. The subject of the study is failure. The phrase acknowledges the reality with academic composure. Repeat. I've made a detailed study of doing this wrong. Example 58. I'm very consistent. Consistently wrong, but consistent. A variation of self-deprecation that finds something positive, consistency, and reveals that the consistency is in error. Context. Someone points out that you always make the same kind of mistake. Usage. You always do this. I know. I'm very consistent. Consistently wrong, but consistent. Why it works. Consistency is generally a virtue. The subversion of the compliment by admitting the content of the consistency is the joke. The rhythm of the sentence, the setup and the reveal is satisfying. Repeat. I'm very consistent. Consistently wrong, but consistent. Example 59. I peaked early. Used about a skill, achievement, or period that has passed its best and is now in decline. Context. You won something or achieved something impressive a long time ago and have not repeated it. Usage. I was first in my class for maths. I was 12. I peaked early. Why it works. I peaked early is a 3-word self-assessment that contains an entire story of early promise and subsequent plateau. The delivery is dry and resigned, but also fundamentally funny because it is so precise. Repeat. I peaked early. Example 60. I was going to prepare for this, and then I didn't. A remarkably honest self-assessment delivered with composure. Context. You are walking into a meeting, interview, or conversation for which you have done no preparation. Usage. Right. I was going to prepare for this, and then I didn't. Let's see how we get on. Why it works. The statement admits failure to prepare with the matter-of-fact tone of reporting the weather. The addition of "let's see how we get on" suggests optimism despite evidence against it. Repeat. I was going to prepare for this, and then I didn't. Example 61. My confidence and my competence are not always aligned. A sophisticated self-assessment that admits to overconfidence. Context. You have undertaken something with great enthusiasm that has not gone entirely well. Usage. I told everyone this would work. I was very confident about it. My confidence and my competence are not always aligned. Why it works. Aligned is a formal, almost corporate term, applied to the personal gap between how capable you feel and how capable you actually are. It produces self-deprecation with intellectual style. Repeat. My confidence and my competence are not always aligned. Example 62. I'm choosing to see this as a learning experience. Said when something has gone badly and you are determinedly finding the positive spin. Context. A project you led has failed publicly and expensively. Usage. The whole thing was a bit of a disaster, to be honest. I'm choosing to see it as a learning experience. Why it works. Choosing to see acknowledges that this positive interpretation is a deliberate decision rather than a natural response. The implication is that the more natural response would be very different. The choice is the joke. Repeat. I'm choosing to see this as a learning experience. Example 63. I thought I knew what I was doing. I was mistaken. Direct, clean, and completely honest self-assessment. Context. Anything where you have overestimated your own ability. Usage. I decided to rewire the plug myself. I thought I knew what I was doing. I was mistaken. Why it works. The two sentences are beautifully matched. The confidence of thought, I knew exactly what I was doing, is immediately and completely punctured by, I was mistaken. The absence of elaboration is the technique. Repeat. I thought I knew what I was doing. I was mistaken. Example 64. I have what I like to call a relaxed relationship with deadlines. A creative euphemism for consistently submitting things late. Context. Explaining your working style to a new colleague or manager. Usage. I should warn you. I have what I like to call a relaxed relationship with deadlines. Why it works. What I like to call introduces a personal, invented terminology that the speaker is aware sounds like a justification. A relaxed relationship with is the perfect softener for being chronically late. The self-awareness is the charm. Repeat. I have what I like to call a relaxed relationship with deadlines. Example 65. I'm an expert at starting things. Said about someone who begins projects enthusiastically but rarely finishes them. Context. Self-assessment in a moment of honesty about your own pattern of behavior. Usage. I've started 3 businesses, 2 novels, and a podcast. I'm an expert at starting things. Why it works. Expert at starting is technically a compliment. Starting requires energy, ideas, and courage. The listener immediately understands that the implied second half, and terrible at finishing, is where the self-deprecation lives. Repeat. I'm an expert at starting things. Example 66. I'm very good at being busy. Less good at being productive. A distinction that many people recognize in themselves, but few are willing to say out loud. Context. Honest self-reflection about a pattern of looking and feeling busy without achieving the right things. Usage. I have been in meetings all week. I'm very good at being busy. Less good at being productive. Why it works. The parallel structure. Very good at X, less good at Y, is rhythmically satisfying. The distinction between busy and productive is precise and relatable. Repeat. I'm very good at being busy. Less good at being productive. Example 67. I have many qualities. Punctuality isn't one of them. The self-deprecation formula. Acknowledge that positives exist while being specific about which one does not. Context. Arriving late to something. Again. Usage. I have many qualities. Punctuality isn't one of them. I'm working on it. Why it works. I have many qualities is generous to yourself. The qualifier immediately removes one of those qualities. I'm working on it adds the suggestion of improvement that may or may not be credible. Repeat. I have many qualities. Punctuality isn't one of them. Example 68. I contain multitudes, mostly contradictions. A literary self-assessment that uses the Whitman phrase and immediately subverts it. Context. Someone points out that you have held two contradictory positions simultaneously. Usage. You said you wanted fewer meetings and more communication. I know. I contain multitudes, mostly contradictions. Why it works. Contain multitudes is grand, poetic, and self-aggrandizing. Mostly contradictions is small, honest, and deflating. The combination is self-deprecation with intellectual flair. Repeat. I contain multitudes, mostly contradictions. Example 69. I'm at my best when the bar is very low. A self-assessment that identifies the precise conditions for your own success. Context. You have just done something well in a situation where almost nothing was required. Usage. I managed to say the right thing at exactly the right moment. I'm at my best when the bar is very low. Why it works. The phrase identifies a real success while immediately contextualizing it in a way that removes the glory. The honesty about the low bar is the self-deprecation. Repeat. I'm at my best when the bar is very low. Example 70. I've been described as a lot of things, most of them accurate. Used when someone is describing your character or behavior. Probably not entirely favorably. Context. Someone has mentioned that you have a reputation for being difficult, pedantic, or blunt. Usage. They say I'm impossible to work with. I've been described as a lot of things, most of them accurate. Why it works. Most of them accurate is remarkably honest. It accepts the characterization without fully endorsing every version of it. The slight qualifier most rather than all gives it a small reserve of dignity. Repeat. I've been described as a lot of things, most of them accurate. Example 71. I looked it up. I was wrong, as usual. The self-deprecation of someone who has learned to accept being wrong as a pattern. Context. You held a confident position on a factual matter and have just discovered you were incorrect. Usage. I was absolutely certain the capital of Australia was Sydney. I looked it up. I was wrong. As usual. Why it works. As usual is the key. It transforms a single error into an acknowledged pattern. The resignation in the phrase is the self-deprecation. Repeat. I looked it up. I was wrong. As usual. Example 72. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Or anyone's, to be honest. A self-assessment that begins with modest acknowledgement and ends in fuller honesty. Context. Someone mentions that you can be difficult to work with. Usage. I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Or anyone's, to be honest. I've made my peace with it. Why it works. Not everyone's cup of tea is a standard British phrase for being someone that not all people enjoy. The extension, or anyone's, to be honest, removes the consolation of the phrase. I've made my peace with it adds resignation. Repeat. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Or anyone's, to be honest. Example 73. My first instinct is usually wrong. I've learned to wait it out. A sophisticated self-assessment that has led to a coping strategy. Context. Describing your decision-making process. Usage. My first instinct is usually wrong. I've learned to wait it out. The second instinct is better. Usually. Why it works. The structure builds from a negative self-assessment to a practical adaptation to a qualified reassurance. The final usually withholds full confidence even from the improved approach. Repeat. My first instinct is usually wrong. I've learned to wait it out. Example 74. I bring a lot of enthusiasm. What I lack in ability, I more than make up for in volume. Self-deprecation about effort without result. Specifically about being loud and energetic without being effective. Context. Describing yourself in a sports team, creative project, or group activity. Usage. I'm not the most talented person in the room. I bring a lot of enthusiasm. What I lack in ability, I more than make up for in volume. Why it works. Make up for implies compensation. Volume is genuinely not a compensation for ability in most contexts. The phrase admits the inadequacy of its own proposed solution. Repeat. I bring a lot of enthusiasm. What I lack in ability, I more than make up for in volume. Example 75. I'm a work in progress. Very slow progress, but progress. The optimistic self-deprecation that claims growth while acknowledging its glacial pace. Context. Reflecting on your own development in any area. Usage. I'm getting better at this. I'm a work in progress. Very slow progress, but progress. Why it works. Work in progress is positive. It implies direction and development. Very slow progress is the self-deprecation. But progress recovers a small amount of dignity. The structure of reduction and partial recovery is the technique. Repeat. I'm a work in progress. Very slow progress, but progress. 75 examples. 3 complete categories. We are now going to move into more advanced and situational forms of English humor. The dry comeback. Sarcasm used with warmth. Dark humor. The callback. And finally, the most important skill of all, reading the room. Category 4. The dry comeback. Timing, delivery. The sentence that lands. The dry comeback is a response, a single line delivered without obvious emotion that lands with unexpected precision. Where self-deprecation turns the joke inward, the dry comeback turns it outward, responding to what someone else has said in a way that reframes it, subverts it, or exposes its absurdity with minimum apparent effort. The delivery is everything. A dry comeback delivered at the wrong speed, with too much enthusiasm, or with any trace of smugness, dies immediately. The secret is the pause before it, and the complete absence of performance in the delivery. It should sound as if you barely noticed you were being funny. Example 76. I'll take that on board. Said when you have absolutely no intention of taking it on board. Context. Someone has given you feedback you disagree with, or advice you did not ask for. Usage. You should really try the low-carb approach. I'll take that on board. Why it works. Take that on board is the polite business phrase for I will consider this, said dryly. It means I have noted that you said this and I will think no more about it. The listener understands exactly which version is being deployed. Repeat. I'll take that on board. Example 77. Helpful. Thank you. Said when something is the opposite of helpful. Context. Someone has explained a problem you already knew about without offering any solution. Usage. The presentation isn't landing, and we have 12 minutes left. Helpful. Thank you. Why it works. Helpful is a one-word ironic assessment. Thank you adds a bureaucratic politeness that makes the irony complete. The dryness of the delivery is essential. If it sounds sarcastic in tone, it fails. Repeat. Helpful. Thank you. Example 78. Yes, I had noticed. Said when someone has pointed out something extremely obvious that you could not possibly have missed. Context. Someone tells you that your presentation is running long while you are delivering it. Usage. You're running about 20 minutes over. Yes, I had noticed. Why it works. Yes. I had noticed confirms the observation while implying it was unnecessary to share it. The I had noticed past tense is crucial. It says you were already aware and they have simply told you something you knew. Repeat. Yes, I had noticed. Example 79. Noted. One of the most versatile dry responses in English. Said to acknowledge something without giving it any more than acknowledgement. Context. Someone has made a comment, observation, or complaint about something you are not going to change. Usage. The coffee machine is making a strange noise again. Noted. Why it works. Noted confirms receipt of information. It is the minimum possible response. Used dryly. It implies the information has been received and stored in a place from which it will not be retrieved. Repeat. Noted. Example 80. I can see how you might think that. Used when you think someone is entirely wrong, but wish to say so with maximum composure. Context. Someone has made a factual error or expressed an opinion that you consider misguided. Usage. I think the project will be done by Friday. I can see how you might think that. Why it works. I can see how you might think that validates the process of arriving at the wrong conclusion without endorsing the conclusion. It is the polite English way of saying you are wrong. Repeat. I can see how you might think that. Example 81. That's certainly a choice. Used when someone has made a decision you consider extremely questionable. Context. A colleague announces they are wearing a brightly patterned suit to a formal client meeting. Or a manager reveals a bizarre strategic decision. Usage. We're going to rebrand in green and yellow. That's certainly a choice. Why it works. That's certainly a choice acknowledges the freedom to make choices without assessing the quality of this one. That certainly adds a weight that confirms the speaker has registered the full magnitude of what has been decided. Repeat. That's certainly a choice. Example 82. Well, you don't do things by halves. Said when someone has done something with extreme, possibly excessive commitment. Context. Someone has bought 40 plants when they said they were going to add a bit of greenery to their flat. Usage. I went to get a couple of houseplants. 40 plants later? Well, you don't do things by halves. Why it works. Don't do things by halves is a real English expression meaning to commit fully. Applied to something absurd or excessive, it becomes the dry comeback that names the situation without expressing judgment. Repeat. Well, you don't do things by halves. Example 83. Ambitious. A single word that, delivered with the right tone, says an enormous amount about a plan, idea, or target. Context. A colleague proposes doing something that would require 3 times the available time, budget, and expertise. Usage. We could redo the entire website in 2 weeks. Ambitious. Why it works. Ambitious is technically a compliment. Used dryly about something unrealistic, it becomes a carefully worded critique. The listener immediately understands that ambitious means essentially impossible. Repeat. Ambitious. Example 84. That's one approach. Used to acknowledge a method you would not have chosen and consider to be wrong. Context. A colleague has solved a problem in a way that is technically valid, but clearly not optimal. Usage. I reversed out of the tight parking space by going through the hedge. That's one approach. Why it works. That's one approach confirms the existence of the approach while implying that other, better approaches were available. It is a critique delivered with perfect composure. Repeat. That's one approach. Example 85. I'm glad someone is enjoying themselves. Said when one person in a group is having a much better time than everyone else. Context. Everyone is struggling with a difficult task or situation, while one person seems unbothered. Usage. You look remarkably cheerful for someone who just sat through 3 hours of budget presentations. I'm glad someone is enjoying themselves. Why it works. I'm glad someone is enjoying themselves manages to be simultaneously generous. It expresses genuine pleasure that someone is happy, and deeply pointed. It emphasizes that the speaker is not. Repeat. I'm glad someone is enjoying themselves. Example 86. Now you tell me. Said when important information has arrived too late to be useful. Context. You have just done something incorrectly or unnecessarily because nobody told you the right approach. Usage. You could have just emailed the form rather than coming in person. Now you tell me. Why it works. Now you tell me acknowledges the usefulness of the information while emphasizing the terrible timing of its delivery. The resigned flatness of the delivery is the technique. Repeat. Now you tell me. Example 87. I'm sure that helps. Said when someone has offered information or support that helps not at all. Context. You are trying to find your way somewhere, and someone gives you directions using landmarks that no longer exist. Usage. Turn left at the old post office. That closed 10 years ago, but it used to be on the corner. I'm sure that helps. Why it works. I'm sure that helps mirrors the format of the irony category. The certainty of I'm sure combined with the uselessness of the actual contribution is the gap. Repeat. I'm sure that helps. Example 88. I'll make a note of that. Identical in meaning to I'll take that on board, deployed with the same dry acknowledgement that something has been received and will go no further. Context. Unsolicited advice or observations that you are processing with composure. Usage. You might want to think about your work-life balance. I'll make a note of that. Why it works. Making a note of something sounds industrious and responsive. The implication is that the note will be made and then filed in a place that is never opened. Repeat. I'll make a note of that. Example 89. Interesting priorities. Said when someone has decided to focus on something that seems entirely wrong given the circumstances. Context. In the middle of a crisis, someone raises a minor aesthetic concern. Usage. Should we change the font on the website while the server is down? Interesting priorities. Why it works. Interesting is not quite wrong or misguided. It is simply a description of the quality of being distinctive or noteworthy. Applied to priorities that are clearly misaligned, it is the driest possible critique. Repeat. Interesting priorities. Example 90. Oh, I'm sure it's fine. Said about something that is clearly not fine, as a way of choosing not to engage with the concern. Context. There is an obvious problem that the speaker has noticed, but decided to leave for another moment. Usage. The boiler is making a different sound. Oh, I'm sure it's fine. What was I saying? Why it works. I'm sure it's fine is the dismissal of concern, combined with what was I saying, which moves the conversation on. It creates a complete comedic moment of willful non-engagement with a real problem. Repeat. Oh, I'm sure it's fine. Example 91. Naturally. A single word dry comeback that acknowledges an entirely predictable negative outcome. Context. Something you fully expected to go wrong has gone wrong. Usage. The Wi-Fi has gone down during the online presentation. Naturally. Why it works. Naturally means, of course, it was to be expected. Delivered flatly about a bad outcome, it confirms that the speaker is not surprised and was perhaps grimly anticipating this moment all along. Repeat. Naturally. Example 92. I appreciate the warning. Said when a warning has arrived far too late to be useful, or after the thing being warned about has already occurred. Context. Someone warns you about a meeting you have just walked out of. Usage. That meeting is going to be very long. I appreciate the warning. I've just sat through 3 hours of it. Why it works. I appreciate the warning is formally gracious. The context, that the warning is completely after the fact, turns the graciousness into irony. Repeat. I appreciate the warning. Example 93. Bold move. Said about a decision that is either genuinely brave or, more often, extremely risky in a way that may not have been properly considered. Context. Someone announces they have quit their job without a plan, or responded to an email in a way that will have consequences. Usage. I replied all to the company email. Bold move. Why it works. Bold move acknowledges courage without endorsing wisdom. The tone of the delivery determines whether it is admiring or alarmed. Repeat. Bold move. Example 94. I stand corrected. Said in a tone that suggests you remain entirely uncorrected. Context. Someone has tried to correct you on something, and you are choosing to respond with formal composure rather than genuine concession. Usage. Actually, it's nuclear, not nuclear. I stand corrected. Why it works. I stand corrected is the formal language of genuine concession. Deployed with the right flat delivery, it acknowledges the correction without actually accepting it. The listener has to decide which version they are hearing. Repeat. I stand corrected. Example 95. How reassuring. Said when something is the opposite of reassuring. Context. You ask about flight safety statistics and receive a technically accurate but not comforting response. Usage. Most turbulence is entirely harmless. How reassuring. Why it works. How reassuring sets the standard of having been made to feel better. The delivery makes clear that the standard has not been met. The phrase is elegant precisely because it does what the dry comeback does best, says the opposite of what the situation warrants. Perfectly. Repeat. How reassuring. Example 96. Terrific. A single word that, delivered with complete flatness on bad news, contains enormous dry irony. Context. You receive news that something has gone wrong, been canceled, or failed. Usage. The venue has double booked. Terrific. Why it works. Terrific is one of the most positive words available. Applied flatly to a bad situation, it becomes immediately and recognizably ironic. It is the cousin of brilliant and perfect in the dry comeback vocabulary. Repeat. Terrific. Example 97. I'll put that in the suggestion box. Said about feedback or advice you have no intention of acting on. Context. Someone offers an unsolicited and unwelcome suggestion about how you should do your job. Usage. You should really be using a different system for this. I'll put that in the suggestion box. Why it works. The suggestion box is a mechanism for collecting ideas that are then generally ignored. Promising to put something there is a polite way of telling someone their suggestion has been received and will proceed no further. Repeat. I'll put that in the suggestion box. Example 98. At this point, I'm not even surprised. Used when something bad has become so routine that it no longer produces a reaction. Context. A recurring problem has occurred for the fourth time in a week. Usage. The printer is broken again. At this point, I'm not even surprised. Why it works. Not even surprised describes exhaustion with a pattern. The phrase has a resigned quality that makes it comic because the speaker has fully adapted to unreliable circumstances. Repeat. At this point, I'm not even surprised. Example 99. That's going in the book. Said about something absurd, embarrassing, or memorable that deserves to be recorded. Context. A colleague has said or done something particularly spectacular. Usage. He introduced the CEO by the wrong name in front of the whole company. That's going in the book. Why it works. The book is imaginary, but its existence is implied with complete seriousness. The phrase acknowledges that what has happened has risen to the level of documentation. Repeat. That's going in the book. Example 100. And there it is. Said when something entirely predictable has just happened. Context. A meeting that was supposed to take 30 minutes has just passed the 2-hour mark for the third consecutive week. Usage. We're now 90 minutes in and still on agenda item 2. And there it is. Why it works. And there it is has a quality of resigned inevitability. It says this was expected. Here it is. And I am completely unsurprised. The flatness of the delivery is everything. Repeat. And there it is. 100 examples. 4 complete categories. Let us continue with sarcasm, dark humor, the callback, and reading the room. Category 5. Sarcasm used with warmth, connecting rather than cutting. There is a version of sarcasm that is cruel, that uses ironic praise to diminish or belittle someone. That is not what we are studying here. We are studying the version of sarcasm that is affectionate, that exists between friends, colleagues, and people who know each other well, and that strengthens connection rather than damaging it. Warm sarcasm is the language of closeness. You can only use it with people who understand you well enough to know you are being affectionate rather than unkind. And knowing when you are in that kind of relationship and when you are not is the critical skill. Example 101. Oh, look who decided to show up. Said affectionately to someone who has arrived slightly late to a gathering of friends. Context. A friend who is perpetually late finally arrives. Usage. Oh, look who decided to show up. We thought you'd forgotten. Why it works. Look who decided to show up implies that the arrival was optional and the person exercised choice in coming. It teases without criticizing. It is the language of friendships where lateness is an established and forgiven habit. Repeat. Oh, look who decided to show up. Example 102. Thanks for the warning. Said to a friend who has just revealed an inconvenient truth just a moment too late. Context. A friend tells you that the person you just said something to is the boss of the company you are interviewing with. Usage. She's the head of the department, by the way. Thanks for the warning. Why it works. The sarcasm here is warm because it is directed at the timing rather than the person. The shared awareness of the awkwardness creates connection rather than blame. Repeat. Thanks for the warning. Example 103. Oh, he's full of good ideas. Said about someone known for ideas that never quite work out as planned. Context. A friend or colleague you know well has just proposed another impractical scheme. Usage. He wants to drive to Edinburgh overnight, visit 3 different cities, and come back by Sunday. Oh, he's full of good ideas. Why it works. He's full of good ideas is technically a compliment. Said in the right tone between people who know this person, it becomes warm, affectionate sarcasm, not mocking the person, but sharing a fond exasperation. Repeat. Oh, he's full of good ideas. Example 104. Well, that's very you. Said when someone does something entirely characteristic, especially if that characteristic is eccentric, chaotic, or optimistically impractical. Context. A friend announces they have spontaneously adopted a third cat or signed up for a marathon with 3 days' notice. Usage. I've decided to learn the piano by March. Well, that's very you. Why it works. That's very you acknowledges a pattern of behavior with affectionate recognition. It says, I know you, I see you, and this is completely consistent with everything I know about you. Repeat. Well, that's very you. Example 105. I don't know how you manage it. Said with warmth about someone who repeatedly achieves something you find baffling, for better or worse. Context. A friend gets themselves into the same kind of complicated situation repeatedly and somehow survives it. Usage. She's managed to book 2 holidays on the same weekend again. I genuinely don't know how she manages it. Why it works. I don't know how you manage it is usually a compliment. Used in this context, it is affectionate sarcasm, marveling at someone's ability to create or navigate chaos. Repeat. I don't know how you manage it. Example 106. Shocking behavior. Said in a tone of complete delight when a friend does something mildly naughty or unexpected. Context. A usually restrained friend orders dessert, stays out late, or makes an uncharacteristic spontaneous decision. Usage. She ordered a second glass of wine. On a Tuesday. Shocking behavior. Why it works. Shocking behavior implies a scandal. The mildness of the actual act is the joke. The warm delivery says, I'm delighted by this. Repeat. Shocking behavior. Example 107. Absolutely scandalous. The elevated version of shocking behavior applied to something trivial with mock seriousness. Context. A friend has eaten the last biscuit without telling anyone. Usage. He ate the last chocolate digestive and didn't say anything. Absolutely scandalous. Why it works. Scandalous belongs to the vocabulary of serious moral failure. Applied to a minor domestic transgression, it becomes a warm joke about the absurdity of escalating small things. Repeat. Absolutely scandalous. Example 108. Of course he did. Said with resigned affection when someone known for a certain behavior has behaved exactly as expected. Context. A friend known for being forgetful has forgotten something again. Usage. He forgot he was supposed to come. Of course he did. Why it works. Of course he did confirms that this was entirely predictable. The resigned quality suggests a long and fond history with this behavior pattern. The warmth is in the acceptance. Repeat. Of course he did. Example 109. You're a disaster. Said affectionately to a close friend who has done something chaotic or silly. Context. A friend has locked themselves out of their house for the second time in a week. Usage. I've locked myself out again. You're an absolute disaster. Why it works. Calling a close friend a disaster is an affectionate insult, one that is only possible in relationships of genuine warmth. The emphasis on absolute amplifies the mock condemnation. Repeat. You're a disaster. Example 110. Imagine my surprise, said dryly when something entirely predictable has happened, in a context of warm, shared awareness. Context. You and a friend both predicted that a plan would not work. It has not worked. Usage. The plan didn't work. Imagine my surprise. Why it works. The phrase is an invitation to imagine surprise that both parties know is not being felt. In a warm context, it creates the connection of shared, correct prediction. Repeat. Imagine my surprise. Example 111. You're incorrigible. A warm word for someone who is cheerfully, repeatedly, irredeemably themselves. Context. A friend has done something characteristic that you have told them about many times before and that they show no signs of changing. Usage. I bought 4 more pairs of trainers. You're incorrigible. Why it works. Incorrigible technically means unable to be corrected or reformed. Used with warmth, it is affectionate, acknowledging that someone is resolutely themselves and expressing fondness for that. Repeat. You're incorrigible. Example 112. I'm sure you had your reasons. Said when the reasons for something are unclear or clearly not good. Context. A friend reveals a decision that seems not to have been made on the basis of careful thought. Usage. I named the cat after my ex. I'm sure you had your reasons. Why it works. I'm sure you had your reasons extends a polite benefit of the doubt while implying that the reasons may not withstand examination. The warmth is in the non-judgment. Repeat. I'm sure you had your reasons. Example 113. Naturally, this was your idea. Said when a plan has gone wrong and you want to identify the source with affectionate blame. Context. You and a friend are in a situation that was the friend's idea and is not going well. Usage. We're lost, it's raining, and the restaurant was closed. Naturally, this was your idea. Why it works. Naturally returns us to the vocabulary of dry inevitability. The identification of the responsible party is warm and shared rather than genuinely accusatory. Repeat. Naturally, this was your idea. Example 114. I don't know why I'm surprised. The confession of fondly resigned predictability. Context. A friend has done exactly what you could have predicted they would do. Usage. He's organized the holiday spreadsheet down to 15-minute intervals. I don't know why I'm surprised. Why it works. I don't know why I'm surprised says surprise was attempted but should not have been. The warmth is in the I don't know, genuine bafflement at one's own failure to predict the utterly predictable. Repeat. I don't know why I'm surprised. Example 115. Perfectly reasonable. Said with warm sarcasm about something that is not remotely reasonable. Context. A friend announces a plan that has several obvious impracticalities. Usage. I'm going to cycle to France this weekend. Perfectly reasonable. Why it works. Perfectly reasonable is the warm sarcasm endorsement, the phrase that technically approves a plan while communicating that the speaker considers it slightly unhinged. The warmth is in the acceptance alongside the sarcasm. Repeat. Perfectly reasonable. Example 116. Good luck with that. said to a friend who has undertaken something unlikely to succeed, with affectionate rather than malicious intent. Context. A friend announces they are going to reorganize their entire home this weekend. Usage. I'm going to sort out the garage this weekend. Good luck with that. Why it works. Good luck with that is technically supportive. The tone communicates that the speaker has doubts about the likelihood of completion, but wishes well anyway. Repeat. Good luck with that. Example 117. You've really thought this through. The warm, sarcastic endorsement for a plan that is clearly underprepared. Context. A friend reveals a plan that has been made spontaneously without any consideration of the practicalities. Usage. I'm going to move to Italy next month. I don't speak Italian, and I don't have a job there, but I'll figure it out. You've really thought this through. Why it works. You've really thought this through mirrors the structure of the irony category, but is deployed between friends with affectionate warmth rather than critique. Repeat. You've really thought this through. Example 118. I have every faith in you. Said with warm sarcasm to a friend who is attempting something they are not well equipped for. Context. A friend who is not known for their technical abilities is attempting a significant DIY project. Usage. Right. I'm going to fit the new bathroom myself. I have every faith in you. Why it works. Every faith is maximalist confidence, said about a situation where confidence is not quite warranted. It becomes warmly ironic. The faith is genuine, but the speaker knows it may not be sufficient. Repeat. I have every faith in you. Example 119. What could go wrong? Identical to the earlier irony example, but deployed here in a warm, affectionate context between friends. Context. You and a friend are about to do something inadvisable together. Usage. We're going to attempt this without reading the instructions. What could go wrong? Why it works. In the warm sarcasm context, what could go wrong is shared. You are both in on the joke, both aware of the risk, and both choosing to proceed anyway. The shared foolishness is the bonding. Repeat. What could go wrong? Example 120. We're going to be fine. Said in a tone that communicates the opposite. Delivered between two people who both know the situation is uncertain. Context. You and a friend are about to attempt something difficult, unfamiliar, or risky together. Usage. We have no idea what we're doing, and we have 40 minutes. We're going to be fine. Why it works. We're going to be fine is the warm sarcasm of shared courage. Both people know it might not be fine. Saying it anyway creates the solidarity that makes the attempt possible. Repeat. We're going to be fine. Example 121. Completely unforeseeable. Used between friends when something entirely predictable has happened. Context. A plan that both of you knew had problems has failed in the way you both predicted. Usage. The shortcut added 40 minutes to the journey. Completely unforeseeable. Why it works. Unforeseeable means impossible to predict. The shared knowledge that it was entirely foreseeable is the joke. The mockery is directed at the mutual failure to correct the plan in advance. Repeat. Completely unforeseeable. Example 122. Classic. A single word that, delivered between friends, acknowledges a characteristic behavior with warm, affectionate resignation. Context. A friend does something that is entirely typical of them, for better or worse. Usage. He's organized the party down to the minute on a color-coded spreadsheet. Classic. Why it works. Classic means typical, representative of the person at their most characteristic. Between friends, it is an affectionate acknowledgement of someone's essential nature. Repeat. Classic. Example 1, 2, 3. I will take that as a compliment. Said when something has been said that could be a compliment, but probably is not, and you are choosing to receive it generously. Context. Someone tells you that you are terrifyingly organized, alarmingly persistent, or dangerously competitive. Usage. You're absolutely relentless when you want something. I will take that as a compliment. Why it works. The choice to receive something as a compliment acknowledges that it may not have been intended as one. The warm sarcasm is in the decision to interpret it generously, regardless. Repeat. I will take that as a compliment. Example 124. That's my favorite kind of problem. Said about a problem that is very much not your favorite kind. Context. A friend explains a complicated social situation they are in and asks for your thoughts. Usage. So I need to figure out whether to say something or not say something, and either option has consequences. That's my favorite kind of problem. Why it works. The warm sarcasm here bonds the two people by naming the difficulty with ironic enthusiasm rather than complaint. Repeat. That's my favorite kind of problem. Example 125. You are, as always, a delight. Said affectionately to a friend who has done something characteristic that is both irritating and endearing. Context. A friend has done something that has made your life slightly more complicated in a typically them kind of way. Usage. You've changed the plans again for the third time this week. You are, as always, a delight. Why it works. You are a delight is a genuine compliment. As always, suggests frequency that is both appreciated and lightly exasperating. The warmth is real. The sarcasm is gentle. The combination is the technique of close friendship. Repeat. You are, as always, a delight. 125 examples. 5 categories complete. Let us move through dark humor, the callback, and reading the room. Category 6. Dark humor and its rules, when it works and when it does not. Dark humor finds comedy in death, failure, disaster, grief, illness, and the other subjects that most people avoid. It is a genuine and deeply human coping mechanism, the ability to find absurdity and even laughter in the worst circumstances. When it works, it is deeply bonding and offers a release that no other form of humor can provide. When it does not work, it is cruel, inappropriate, and damaging. The rules of dark humor are strict. Know them before you use a single example from this category. Rule 1. You must have standing. You can use dark humor about your own situation. You can use it in a group that has shared the experience. You cannot use it from outside looking in at someone else's tragedy. Rule 2. The timing must be right. Dark humor works when the worst has passed, when there is enough distance to process, or when the situation is ongoing and laughter is the only way to survive it. It does not work in the immediate, raw moment of catastrophe. Rule 3. It must be inclusive, not diminishing. Dark humor that bonds people to each other works. Dark humor that makes someone the victim of the joke rather than a participant in it is cruelty wearing a comedy mask. Rule 4. Consent matters. Read the room before you go dark. If anyone present seems genuinely distressed, dark humor is wrong. Save it for the moment you are all on the other side. Example 126. Well, at least the worst has already happened. Used in a group that has experienced something bad and is now past the acute phase. Context: after a significant project failure, when the team is beginning to process what happened. Usage: the launch was a complete disaster. Well, at least the worst has already happened. Why it works: it reframes the disaster as a liberation. There is a kind of relief in having hit the bottom because things can only improve. The group laughs because the observation is both true and darkly funny. Repeat: well, at least the worst has already happened. Example 127. This is fine. A reference to a well-known internet meme of a cartoon figure sitting in a burning room, used when everything is clearly not fine. Context: multiple things are going wrong simultaneously, and the speaker is choosing to maintain composure by naming the absurdity. Usage: the systems are down, the presenter has canceled, and it's raining through the ceiling. This is fine. Why it works: the flatness of this is fine in an objectively not fine situation is dark and bonding. The people who recognize the cultural reference find it funnier. The people who do not still understand the irony. Repeat: this is fine. Example 128. I've had worse Tuesdays. A comparison that acknowledges the present difficulty is real but not unprecedented. Context: a difficult day at work, a personal setback, or a minor disaster. Usage: the car broke down and I missed the meeting. I've had worse Tuesdays, honestly. Why it works: it implies a personal history that includes even worse Tuesdays. The specific choice of Tuesday, not Monday, not the weekend, specifically Tuesday, is the comedic precision. Repeat: I've had worse Tuesdays. Example 129. At least we'll have a good story. Said when something has gone spectacularly wrong in a way that will become a memorable anecdote. Context: you are in the middle of a disaster, travel chaos, organizational failure, a series of connected mishaps. Usage: we've missed the connection. Our luggage is in another country, and the hotel doesn't have our booking. At least we'll have a good story. Why it works: it reframes the current suffering as material. The disaster becomes valuable because it is interesting. This is dark humor as optimism. Repeat: at least we'll have a good story. Example 130. We are creating excellent memories. Said in the same spirit as at least we'll have a good story. Context: something that was supposed to be enjoyable has gone wrong in a memorable way. Usage: it's raining, the tent has collapsed, and we can't find the car keys. We are creating excellent memories. Why it works: creating excellent memories is the language of positive experience. The thing people say about genuinely good times. Applied to chaos and misery, it becomes darkly funny. The passive optimism of the claim is the technique. Repeat. We are creating excellent memories. Example 131. I'll sleep when I'm dead. A dark but widely used expression of choosing to push through exhaustion rather than rest. Context. You have been working extremely long hours, and someone asks when you are going to take a break. Usage. When are you going to get some rest? I'll sleep when I'm dead. Why it works. It is dark because it is literally true, and nobody wants to examine it too closely. The bravado of the statement is the joke. Used between people who are tired together. It is bonding. Repeat. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Example 132. If we're going to fail, at least we failed memorably. Said at the conclusion of something that did not go according to plan, but was distinctive in its failure. Context. A project, event, or attempt that did not succeed, but was unusually interesting in how it went wrong. Usage. That is not how I expected today to go. If we're going to fail, at least we failed memorably. Why it works. It introduces a standard of success in failure, the failure that is interesting, that creates stories, that distinguishes itself from ordinary failures. Repeat. If we're going to fail, at least we failed memorably. Example 133. Character building experience. Said about something genuinely awful, using the language of positive development. Context. You have endured something extremely unpleasant and are processing it. Usage. How was the ice swimming in January? Character building. I now have a great deal of character. Why it works. Character building is what adults say to children about unpleasant experiences to help them understand the value. Applied by an adult to themselves, it becomes darkly funny, a self-directed management of suffering. Repeat. Character building experience. Example 134. Not dead yet. A cheerful response to genuine physical hardship or extreme tiredness. Context. Someone asks how you are after a physically demanding experience. Usage. How did the marathon go? Not dead yet. That's the main thing. Why it works. Not dead yet sets the bar of success at survival. It is dark but warm. It acknowledges that the experience was grueling while celebrating the minimum positive outcome. Repeat. Not dead yet. Example 135. There's a lesson in here somewhere. Said about a failure or difficult experience when the lesson is not yet apparent. Context. After something has gone wrong in a confusing or unprecedented way. Usage. How did the experiment go? Catastrophically. There's a lesson in here somewhere. I haven't found it yet. Why it works. There's a lesson in here somewhere is the standard adult reframe of failure as learning. The admission that I haven't found it yet is honest and darkly funny. Repeat. There's a lesson in here somewhere. Example 136. We've done harder things, probably. A darkly uncertain form of encouragement. Context. Before attempting something that seems extremely difficult. Usage. Right. We need to do this in 40 minutes. We've done harder things, probably. Why it works. "We've done harder things" is a genuine motivational phrase. Probably is the dark qualifier that acknowledges the speaker is not entirely sure. The uncertainty is the joke. Repeat. "We've done harder things." Probably. Example 137. "The important thing is that nobody died," said to establish the lower limit of outcomes after a disaster. Context. Something has gone very wrong, but the consequences, while significant, are not permanent. Usage. The whole project has to be redone from scratch. The important thing is that nobody died. Why it works. Nobody died sets the absolute floor of acceptable outcomes. Everything above it, including complete project failure, is contextualized as acceptable. It is dark perspective that is both true and funny. Repeat. The important thing is that nobody died. Example 138. "This is going in my memoir." Said, when something so extraordinary has happened that it must be documented. Context. A situation has become so absurd or difficult that it feels like it should be preserved for posterity. Usage. The client just arrived 4 hours late in a completely different city. This is going in my memoir. Why it works. My memoir implies a future in which the speaker will have lived through this and be able to reflect on it with some distance. The humor is in the confidence of that future perspective. Repeat. This is going in my memoir. Example 139. I'll add it to the list. Said, when something bad has happened in a context where a number of bad things have already happened. Context. Another problem has arrived to join the existing collection. Usage. The flight has been rerouted. I'll add it to the list. Why it works. The list is the accumulation of current disasters. The bureaucratic calm of "I'll add it" implies that the list has been organized and managed, which is itself darkly funny. Repeat. I'll add it to the list. Example 140. I'm sure this is character forming. A variation on the character building category that adds genuine uncertainty. Context. You are in the middle of something difficult and are choosing to find the positive framing, even if you are not sure it applies. Usage. This is the 4th hour of this. I'm sure this is character forming in some way. Why it works. I'm sure introduces ironic confidence. In some way adds vagueness that undermines the confidence. The combined effect is dark optimism expressed with appropriate doubt. Repeat. I'm sure this is character forming. Example 141. We are absolutely fine and we need to stop talking about it immediately. Said when the opposite is true. When things are not fine and talking about them would risk the composure required to continue. Context. You and a colleague are in the middle of a stressful situation and are managing by not examining it too closely. Usage. We're going to get through this. We are absolutely fine and we need to stop talking about it immediately. Why it works. The phrase acknowledges the not fineness while committing to the fiction of fineness as a survival strategy. The dark humor is in the self-awareness about the strategy. Repeat. We are absolutely fine and we need to stop talking about it immediately. Example 142. That's one for the therapy sessions. Used about something that will require significant mental and emotional processing later. Context. a difficult, bizarre, or traumatic experience that cannot be fully addressed in the moment. Usage: the client screamed and then apologized and then screamed again. That's one for the therapy sessions. Why it works: the reference to therapy acknowledges the scale of the emotional impact while treating it with the lightness required to get through the day. Repeat: that's one for the therapy sessions. Example 143. I've started rationing optimism. Said when a long period of difficulty has made enthusiasm a limited resource that must be managed carefully. Context: after a series of setbacks. When asked how you are feeling about the current attempt. Usage: are you feeling good about this? I've started rationing optimism. I have enough for this afternoon. Why it works: rationing optimism treats hope as a finite resource that requires careful management. The specificity of enough for this afternoon is the dark comedy. Repeat: I've started rationing optimism. Example 144. What a time to be alive. Said with flat irony about a particularly absurd, difficult, or chaotic aspect of contemporary existence. Context: something technological, political, or social has happened that is confusing or difficult in a distinctly modern way. Usage: the algorithm has decided to show me 7 consecutive advertisements for things I only thought about. What a time to be alive. Why it works: what a time to be alive is a genuine expression of wonder at living in the present. Deployed as dark humor, it acknowledges that the present is as often bewildering as it is wonderful. Repeat: what a time to be alive. Example 145. I've accepted that this is my life now. Said about a recurring, apparently inescapable difficulty. Context: something that keeps happening despite your efforts to prevent it has happened again. Usage: the boiler has broken for the 3rd winter in a row. I've accepted that this is my life now. Why it works: acceptance is the final stage of grief. Applied to a boiler, it is darkly funny because it brings the full weight of existential resignation to a domestic inconvenience. Repeat: I've accepted that this is my life now. Example 146. On the bright side, it can't get much worse. Said with dark optimism at a very low point. Context: things have gone badly in multiple ways, and you are looking for any positive framing. Usage: we've lost the contract, the server is down, and it's Monday. On the bright side, it can't get much worse. Why it works: it can't get much worse is technically optimistic. It sets the current moment as the floor. The dark humor is in the fact that this is the most optimistic thing available to say. Repeat: on the bright side, it can't get much worse. Example 147. I'll worry about that tomorrow. Said about a problem that clearly needs to be addressed, but is being deliberately deferred. Context: a future problem or consequence looms, but the present moment requires full attention. Usage: what are we going to tell the client? I'll worry about that tomorrow. We have to get through today first. Why it works: I'll worry about that tomorrow is practical denial, a conscious, temporary refusal to engage with a future problem in order to function in the present. The dark humor is in the self-awareness of the deferral. Repeat: I'll worry about that tomorrow. Example 148. We're definitely going to look back on this and laugh. Said when you are not at all sure that will be true. Context. Something genuinely bad is happening, and you are looking for any positive reframe. Usage. This has been the worst week in recent memory. We're definitely going to look back on this and laugh. Why it works. Definitely provides false certainty. The use of definitely to cover deep uncertainty is the dark comedy. The listener may or may not believe it. The speaker may not either. Repeat. We're definitely going to look back on this and laugh. Example 149. I've decided that suffering builds character, and I am, therefore, becoming extremely characterful. A highly formal articulation of a coping philosophy. Context. After a period of sustained difficulty. Usage. It's been a genuinely difficult few months. I've decided that suffering builds character, and I am, therefore, becoming extremely characterful. Why it works. The formal, logical structure applied to personal suffering is darkly funny. The word characterful, not the most common usage, adds a slight absurdism. Repeat. I've decided that suffering builds character, and I am, therefore, becoming extremely characterful. Example 150. We're all in this together. Unfortunately. Said in the spirit of shared suffering that bonds rather than isolates. Context. A group of people is in the middle of a difficult situation. They are all experiencing simultaneously. Usage. Right. It's awful for everyone. We're all in this together. Unfortunately. Why it works. We're all in this together is genuine solidarity. Unfortunately is the dark amendment. The recognition that the togetherness would not be required if the situation were not so bad. The warmth and the darkness exist simultaneously. Repeat. We're all in this together. Unfortunately. Category 7. The callback. Returning to something said earlier for maximum effect. The callback is one of the most sophisticated techniques in comedy. It takes something said earlier in a conversation, a phrase, an observation, a mistake, a prediction, and returns to it later in a way that creates a second, larger laugh built on the foundation of the first. The callback says, I was listening, I remembered, and I have been waiting for exactly the right moment to use this. Example 151. And there's that word again. Used when someone uses a word or phrase they used earlier that was funny, unusual, or notable. Context. Someone uses an unusual word or makes a particular claim early in the conversation and then repeats it. Usage. So ultimately, it was a very synergistic outcome. And there's that word again. Why it works. Calling attention to the repetition of a notable word rewards attentive listening and creates a shared joke about the speaker's language patterns. Repeat. And there's that word again. Example 152. Remember when you said it couldn't get worse? Used to call back a specific earlier prediction that has been proved wrong. Context. Someone said earlier that things were at their worst. Things have since got worse. Usage. The projector has stopped working too. Remember when you said it couldn't get worse? Why it works. The callback punishes the specific earlier prediction with the precision of the current evidence. The funnier the original confidence, the funnier the callback. Repeat. Remember when you said it couldn't get worse? Example 153. 40 minutes, you said. The callback of a specific time prediction that has not been met. Context. Someone predicted the meeting, journey, or task would take 40 minutes. It has taken significantly longer. Usage. 2 hours later. 40 minutes, you said. Why it works. 40 minutes, you said, quotes the original with perfect accuracy. It requires no further comment. The gap between the prediction and the reality is the entire joke. Repeat. 40 minutes, you said. Example 154. Fairly straightforward, wasn't it? Calling back to a previous description of something as straightforward that has proved to be extremely complicated. Context. Earlier in the task or conversation, someone described it as straightforward. It is not. Usage. Right. 3 hours later, we've finally figured it out. Fairly straightforward, wasn't it? Why it works. The callback uses the exact phrase from earlier. The time elapsed is the measure of how wrong the original assessment was. Repeat. Fairly straightforward, wasn't it? Example 155. Just like you predicted. Used to call back an earlier correct prediction, usually about something going wrong. Context. Earlier, someone predicted something would go wrong. It has. Usage. And the server has crashed, just like you predicted. Why it works. It rewards the correct prediction while lamenting the outcome. The callback honors the accuracy of the earlier observation. Repeat. Just like you predicted. Example 156. I believe your exact words were. The callback that quotes directly. Context. Someone made a claim earlier that has been contradicted by subsequent events. Usage. I believe your exact words were, this will only take 5 minutes. That was 3 hours ago. Why it works. I believe your exact words were, signals precision. The implication is that the words are being recalled with perfect accuracy for maximum effect. Repeat. I believe your exact words were. Example 157. As you said, nothing to worry about. Calling back an earlier reassurance that has proved to be misplaced. Context. Someone reassured the group that something was not a concern. It has become a significant concern. Usage. The budget is now significantly overspent. As you said, nothing to worry about. Why it works. As you said, attributes the reassurance back to its source. Nothing to worry about quotes the specific language of the earlier confidence. Repeat. As you said, nothing to worry about. Example 158. The system, as discussed. Calling back to an earlier claim about having a system. Context. Someone claimed earlier to have a system for organizing something. The system has not materialized or has not worked. Usage. I've put the report somewhere and I can't find it. The system, as discussed. Why it works. As discussed, implies a previous conversation about the system's existence. The current situation proves the system's non-function. Repeat. The system, as discussed. Example 159. The confidence, though. A callback to the gap between how confident someone was about something and how it has turned out. Context. Someone made a claim with great confidence. The claim has turned out to be wrong. Usage. You said you definitely knew the way. We've been lost for 20 minutes. The confidence, though. Why it works. The confidence, though, uses though as a pivot that separates the quality of the delivery from the quality of the content. It admires the confidence while noting its complete disconnection from reality. Repeat. The confidence, though. Example 160. As planned. Said with complete deadpan when something is the opposite of as planned. Context. Something has deviated significantly from any plan that was made. Usage. We've ended up in completely the wrong city. As planned. Why it works. As planned is the standard close to a successfully executed action. Applied to something that has gone entirely wrong, it uses the callback of the original intention as the joke. Repeat. As planned. Example 161. Exactly as the brochure described. A callback to the original description or marketing of something that has not been accurately represented by the reality. Context. Something has failed to match what it promised. Usage. The view is a brick wall and the beach is 40 minutes away. Exactly as the brochure described. Why it works. As the brochure described is the standard of accurate representation. The callback invokes this standard to point out how comprehensively it has been missed. Repeat. Exactly as the brochure described. Example 162. All under control. I see. A callback to an earlier claim of control in a situation that is now clearly not controlled. Context. Someone claimed earlier to have everything under control. It is not under control. Usage. 3 things have gone wrong simultaneously. All under control. I see. Why it works. All under control was the earlier claim. I see adds the dry observation of the current evidence to the contrary. Repeat. All under control. I see. Example 163. The 5-minute update. Calling back to a specific time estimate that has proved dramatically optimistic. Context. Someone said they would give a 5-minute update. The update has lasted much longer. Usage. 45 minutes later. The 5-minute update. Why it works. Naming the original estimate without further comment is the callback at its most economical. The gap speaks for itself. Repeat. The 5-minute update. Example 164. Still fine. A callback to an earlier assessment of something as fine that was immediately followed by it becoming not fine. Context. You said everything was fine. Something immediately went wrong. The callback arrives as the situation continues to deteriorate. Usage. The ceiling is now leaking too. Still fine. Why it works. Still fine implies continuity with the earlier fine. The evidence that everything is the opposite of fine makes the callback land. Repeat. Still fine. Example 165. What were we worried about? A callback to earlier concern, said with dark irony when the concern has proved completely justified. Context. Earlier, people were worried about a specific thing. That thing has happened. Usage. The presentation has completely collapsed. What were we worried about? Why it works. What were we worried about is the phrase of relieved resolution, used in the moment of confirmed disaster. It becomes the dark callback that acknowledges that the worry was completely appropriate. Repeat. What were we worried about? 165 examples, 7 categories complete. 1 final category. Category 8. Reading the room. Knowing when humor helps and when it harms. Every technique in this masterclass is only as good as the judgment applied in using it. The most brilliant joke, delivered to the wrong person, in the wrong moment, in the wrong context, is not funny. It is a mistake, sometimes a serious one. Reading the room is the skill that underpins all the others. It is the ability to sense, through attention, through empathy, through cultural awareness, whether humor is welcome in this moment, with these people, on this subject. These 25 examples teach the signals, the context in which humor works, and the context in which it does not. Not with jokes, but with the observational language of a person who is paying attention. Example 166. This is not the moment. Said internally or quietly to a friend, when you have had a funny thought but correctly identified that the timing is wrong. Usage. You have the perfect ironic observation, but someone in the room is visibly upset. This is not the moment. What this teaches. The first and most important rule of reading the room is knowing when to keep the funny thought to yourself. Example 167. I can tell they need something real right now. The recognition that genuine support is needed, not lightness. Usage. A colleague has received bad personal news. The instinct toward humor must be checked. I can tell they need something real right now. What this teaches. Humor as avoidance or deflection helps nobody. Real presence is the skill. Example 168. The energy has shifted. Said when a room that was open to humor has changed. Someone has become upset. News has arrived. The tone has changed. Usage. The meeting was going well, and then the numbers came in. The energy has shifted. What this teaches. Rooms change in real time. The mood that was present at the start may not be present now. Keep recalibrating. Example 169. Not everyone is in the same place. The recognition that a group contains people with very different emotional states. Usage. Most of the team is relaxed and enjoying the end-of-year event. One person has clearly had a very difficult day. What this teaches. You cannot read the room as a single temperature. Different people in the same room may need different responses. Example 170. I need to earn the right to be funny here. Said before entering a new group or situation where you are not yet known. Usage. You are meeting a new team, a new client, a new group. You have not yet established enough relationship to deploy humor. What this teaches: humor in new relationships requires trust that has not yet been built. Earn it first, then use the tools. Example 171. This is the recovery room, not the operating theater. A metaphor for the difference between when dark humor is appropriate and when it is not. Usage: after a genuine crisis has passed and the team is beginning to process it with some distance, dark humor can begin. During the crisis itself, it cannot. What this teaches: timing is everything in dark humor. The same joke that bonds a group after a disaster would devastate them during it. Example 172. They are laughing, but they are also crying. The recognition of the bittersweet quality of some humor. Usage: in moments of genuine difficulty, laughter and grief coexist. A joke that lands here is not trivializing the grief, it is sharing it. What this teaches: humor does not exclude feeling. The best dark humor honors both at once. Example 173. I got it wrong. The honest acknowledgement when a joke or ironic observation has not landed or has caused offense. Usage: you made a comment that you intended as light and someone received it differently. I got it wrong. What this teaches: the right response to a misfire is acknowledgement without excessive self-flagellation. Own it. Learn from it. Move on. Example 174. They are using humor to cope. The recognition that someone else is using comedy as a survival mechanism. Usage: a colleague makes jokes about a difficult situation they are in. They are not dismissing it. They are surviving it. What this teaches: meeting someone else's coping humor with seriousness or concern can feel like a withdrawal of permission to cope. Sometimes the best thing you can do is laugh with them. Example 175. The laugh was real. The signal that humor has done its job, has connected, has relieved, has made something survivable. Usage: in the middle of a genuinely difficult situation, something funny happens and everyone laughs. A real laugh, not a polite one. What this teaches: when the laugh is real, the room has given its consent. The humor was right for this moment. That is reading the room correctly. Example 176. I can feel the room warming. The sensation of a group becoming more relaxed, more open, more ready for connection. Usage: an initially stiff professional meeting has become more comfortable as the conversation has progressed. What this teaches: warmth in a room is a condition, not a given. It can be created through patience, through genuine attention, and through the right light touch of humor at the right moment. Example 177. They want to laugh. They just need permission. The recognition that a room that is held in tension can often release with a single, well-placed light moment. Usage: a tense meeting has been going for too long and everyone is stressed. A small, appropriate joke gives the room permission to breathe. What this teaches: sometimes the most important role of humor is permission, the signal that relief is allowed. Example 178. This is their story to tell, not mine. Said internally when you have a funny observation about someone else's situation. Usage: a friend's difficult experience could produce a great ironic line, but it is their experience, their narrative, their choice to find humor in it. What this teaches: other people's misfortune is theirs. The right to find humor in it belongs to them first. Example 179. I'll save this for later. The discipline of storing a funny thought for the right moment. Usage. You have the perfect line, but the current moment is not right. I'll save this for later. What this teaches. Good jokes improve with patience. Bad timing destroys them. The discipline of waiting is a skill. Example 180. Some things are not funny yet. The acknowledgement that the distance required for dark humor has not yet been achieved. Usage. Something painful has just happened. The future version of this story might be funny. The current version is not. What this teaches. Time creates permission. What is raw today may be funny in 6 months. Respect the time it takes. Example 181. The room is closed. Said internally when you have correctly identified that humor of any kind is not welcome. Usage. Serious news has been delivered. Genuine grief or concern is present. The room is closed to humor. What this teaches. Recognizing a closed room is as important as knowing how to open one. Sometimes the most skilled thing you can do is put all your tools away. Example 182. They are testing the water. The recognition that someone else is tentatively introducing lightness to see whether it is received. Usage. In the aftermath of something difficult, someone makes a small, careful joke and waits to see how it lands. What this teaches. When someone tests the water with a tentative joke, your response determines whether lightness is available to the group. If you receive it warmly, the room opens. Example 183. I've misjudged this before. The honest recollection of a previous misfire that informs current caution. Usage. You have attempted humor in a context that turned out not to welcome it. The memory keeps you careful. What this teaches. Experience of getting it wrong is the best teacher of reading the room. Every misfire teaches calibration. Example 184. They are not in the same place as me. The recognition that your emotional state and the room's emotional state are different. Usage. You are relaxed and ready for humor. The person or group you are with is not. What this teaches. Your own emotional state is not the measure of the room. The room is the measure of the room. Example 185. I'd rather get it wrong by being too careful than too careless. The philosophical position on reading the room. Usage. When in doubt, hold the joke. The cost of waiting is lower than the cost of misjudging. What this teaches. Caution in humor is not cowardice. It is respect. Example 186. The relationship earns the right. Said about the degree of closeness that is required before certain kinds of humor become available. Usage. Some irony, some dark humor, and almost all sarcasm require a level of relationship that must be built over time. What this teaches. Not all techniques in this masterclass are available immediately. They are unlocked by relationship. Example 187. They are laughing because they feel seen, not because they think it's funny. The recognition of the particular laugh of recognition when humor lands because it is true. Usage. A joke about a shared experience lands differently from a joke about something abstract. The laugh is different. It comes from the body rather than the mind. What this teaches: the most powerful humor connects to truth. Reading the room includes reading what truth is present in the room. Example 188. I'll let them lead. Said when you are uncertain whether the room is ready and choose to follow rather than initiate. Usage: you are with someone in a difficult situation. Rather than introducing lightness yourself, you wait for them to signal it. What this teaches: leadership in humor is sometimes followership. Giving the other person the power to decide when relief is available is a generous act. Example 189. That laugh was polite. The recognition of the polite laugh, the laugh that says, I received this. I know it was supposed to be funny. I am being kind. Usage: a joke lands slightly wrong or slightly late and produces a polite, controlled laugh rather than a real one. What this teaches: know the difference between a real laugh and a polite one. The polite laugh is valuable information. Adjust accordingly. Example 190. And now the room is open. The moment when the right joke or light observation has shifted the energy of a room from closed to open. Usage: a tense meeting breaks with a genuine laugh, and everything becomes slightly easier from that moment. What this teaches: this is what all the techniques in this masterclass are building toward. Not a punchline, not a performance. A room that is a little more alive, a little more connected, a little more human than it was before you spoke. Repeat. And now the room is open. Closing. 200 examples. 8 categories. And we have done it together. I want to sit with you here for a moment before you close this lesson, because what we have done today is something that no English class has ever given you. We have not learned grammar. We have not learned vocabulary. We have learned something far more intimate than either of those things. We have learned the hidden language of English, the layer underneath the words, where irony says the opposite, and understatement says less, and self-deprecation reveals strength, and the dry comeback lands in silence, and warm sarcasm is the sound of friendship, and dark humor is the sound of survival, and the callback is the sound of someone who was paying attention. You now understand why English humor sounds the way it does, why a native speaker will say, it's not ideal about a catastrophe, why they will call a disaster brilliant, why they will praise themselves for being consistently wrong, why the funniest thing a British person can say about themselves is usually something that sounds like an insult. And you understand something even more important than the techniques. You understand the rules, the context, the relationships, the timing, the permission. You understand that humor in English is not performance. It is connection. And connection requires reading the room, earning the right, and knowing, always, when to put the tools away. Here is what I want you to do before you close this lesson. Choose 5 examples from today, 1 from each of your 5 favorite categories. Write them down. Say each one out loud 5 times. And then notice, in the next week, where you could have used them in a real moment. Not where you did use them, where you could have. That awareness is the beginning. The use follows naturally. This channel publishes a brand new English lesson every single day. If today's masterclass gave you something that goes beyond vocabulary and into the actual experience of English, if it showed you a layer of the language you had sensed but not yet been able to name, please subscribe now and press the bell icon so you never miss what comes next. And if this lesson made you smile, even once, please give it a like and share it with someone who wants to be genuinely funny in English, not just correct, funny. There is a difference, and today you learned it. Before you go, please subscribe to English in Moments and press the bell icon so you never miss a new lesson. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for spending this time with me today. I'm Elena from English in Moments, and I will see you in the very next lesson.